Welcome to How to Live Slow, the podcast where we discuss slow living for the modern woman and help you design an intentionally slower family life. I'm Rachelle Glendon, your personal slow living coach and host of this podcast. I know all about busy, but I love living slow. Enjoy the show. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of How to Live Slow, episode 53. And welcome if this is your very first time tuning in. Today we're talking about body shame, period shame, and the patriarchy. And I can't wait to dive in. This is such a deep and winding conversation, and my guest is Kylie Blascetta from Liminal Women. Kylie is a women's circle and workshop facilitator, and Liminal Women was created with the goal of empowering women to explore, experience, embody, and express their own unique divine truth through being seen, heard, and held in women's circles. So Kylie is such a wealth of knowledge. She just knows so much about, systems of oppression like the patriarchy, like capitalism, but she also understands women's bodies and how to learn to listen to your body and the messages that it's sending. She understands and explains all about periods and how how we got to the point of having body shame and being ashamed of our periods. So, and you may think, well, I'm not ashamed of my period, but if you listen in today, you'll sort of see exactly what we mean by that. So this is one of those episodes that come along every couple of months that is almost an hour long, but I know that these are some of your favourites. We've had a couple of really long episodes about slow postpartum and relationships and things like that, and they have been my most popular. I'm sure that this is going to be just one of those as well. And I can't wait to introduce you to Kylie in just one moment. But before we do, I wanted to let you know that the Martyr to Matriarch Method tickets are currently on sale. It's $147 for all 3 workshops. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the Martyr to Matriarch Method is my signature 3-part workshop series, and it's all about how to go from martyr to matriarch, funnily enough. It's all about releasing the stories that hold you back and keep you in overwhelm, resentment, and survival mode. And it helps you to understand why you can't seem to stop nagging or yelling and feeling really frustrated with family life, even though that's not what you envisioned for your family life. I believe that you're not here to feel all of those things. You're here to lead your family and to feel fulfilled in all of those aspects. So this is my 3-part workshop series that helps you to do that. If you really enjoy this episode and this chat with Kylie, you are going to love the Martyr to Matriarch series. If it gets you really riled up, then I definitely recommend that you come and check out the Martyr to Matriarch. You can find it on my website, howtoliveslow.com/method. And yeah, we start next week, so I cannot wait to get to know the ladies that are coming in to the program. So enjoy today's chat with Kylie, and hopefully I'll see you in the Martyr to Matriarch Method. Hi Kylie, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really lovely to chat with you.
Thank you, Rachelle. I'm excited to be here.
Why don't we just get started with the beginning and tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. For me, my story started when my son was born. So he's 9 now, actually. So it started quite a while ago. And when my son was born, I had a really big, identity shift / crisis, shall we call it? Let's be honest. And at the time, I didn't really know what it was all about. But now looking back, I can see that it was actually my matrescence experience. And now that I'm learning more about it, I can see why that happened and how that, kind of helped me grow as a person. And what that experience did for me was really help me learn how to break free of some of the kind of negative thought patterns that I was having, the negative relationship I was having with myself, and really learn self-compassion and self-kindness and come back to, who I really was underneath all of those unhealthy kind of patterns that I had. So I did a lot of personal work, a lot of kind of deep reflection and a lot of personal work to rewrite the stories around myself and how I felt about myself. And that was really awesome. But then I kind of felt that I had a good relationship with my identity and with my self-worth and my self-esteem, but I didn't love my body, which just was really incongruent. How can I love myself? But then I'll turn around and say nice things to myself and I'll reinforce a positive relationship, but I'll also talk badly to myself about my body. So it just started to feel incongruent. And I guess I started to get an awareness of that. And so I thought, well, I've done all this work on feeling good about myself, who I am as a person. Now I think I need to delve into the body love journey and really kind of look at what's going on there. And that was about 4 years ago or so. And I realized I had really faced my body shame and work through that, dig under the layers and find out, well, why do I feel like this? And why do I beat myself up about my body? And what's driving that? So I did that. That was another process of learning and exploring and unpacking my stories around that. And so I started to feel really comfortable in my skin. I started to feel really confident. I had a newfound respect for my body, but I didn't realize I had another blind spot. So my next blind spot was actually loving my menstruating body, because what would happen is I would feel really good for 2 weeks of the month. I would feel fantastic. I'd have loads of energy. I'd be focused. I'd feel very generous with my family and my friends. I had rose-colored glasses on for 2 weeks of the month. And then the next 2 weeks, I was like a raving lunatic. Like someone could just look at me the wrong way and I'd just be on edge and irritable. And that was obviously my premenstrual stage. And then when my period hit, I just would feel just this real resistance to my body, just feeling like, why isn't my body doing what it should be doing? Why can't I just push through this? And why do I have to have a period? This is so inconvenient. Because I just come off the back of weeks of feeling really good and didn't know that that's what was going on. I didn't realize that this was my pattern of behavior. So then fast forward to about 18 months ago or so, I started to have a change in my periods, and I started to get really heavy periods, and they were really painful, to the point where I'd have to lie in bed all day continuously with hot packs on. And this was new for me. This was not my experience. It was an extension of my experience, but it was quite severe. So I went to the doctor because that's what you should do if you experience a change in your menstruation. It's a really good idea to follow that up with a medical professional and get the test done and see if there's anything in your body that needs to be addressed. So I went to the doctor and I had the test done. And she actually said to me, no, there's no medical cause for this change, this sudden change in your period. She said the only thing that could be going on is stress. That could be kind of interrupting your period and changing your experience. So I kind of went, okay, I know that I'm experiencing dis-ease, but it's not actual disease. I'm uncomfortable with this experience, but it's not a medical condition. And I thought, well, what am I doing to contribute to this situation? What are the stories I'm telling myself? That now I need to unpack more. I need to go deeper and kind of really look at what's going on between me and my body when it becomes to my menstrual cycle. And lo and behold, I realized that, there was a level of menstrual shame that I still had to unpack. There was taboo, there was rejection of my body. And these were all in the kind of unconscious stories that I was telling myself. I didn't really realize it, but I would say things to people like, oh God, my period, how inconvenient. Why does this have to happen now? And just feel like I had to pull up my bootstraps and keep going and push through, even though my body was telling me lots of other messages to slow down and be honoring and respectful of what was going on in my body. I just had to keep going, keep pushing, which was then getting me to the point of being actually immobilized when I did have my period. I actually had to take time off work or not do anything for 3 whole days. It really stopped me in my tracks. So I guess when I looked at what was going on with my relationship, I thought, why do we experience this? Why do we experience period shame? Why do we push ourselves? And has it always been like this? Have we always treated our bodies like this? And I actually found out that ancient cultures didn't do this. They didn't force women to push through their period, and they actually honored and revered and respected the menstrual cycle as part of the beautiful cycle of life. And so I felt that it was really important to share that message and my practice that I had developed, as well as educating women to have a sense of understanding of what's going on in their body, which is the term for that is body literacy, understanding the messages that your body is giving you so that you can feel empowered to make different choices.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love it that you've been able to go on this journey, and now that you guide other women to cultivate this positive relationship with their bodies. let's talk about shame in general, because I feel like that's where we develop our negative relationship with our bodies in the first place.
Yes, so this is a huge topic that we could talk about for hours.
Yes.
And I think yes, because there is not a single person on the planet who hasn't experienced some form of body shame. But there are some people in the world who experience more shaming from our culture and our society.
Yeah.
So we really need to get back to looking at, well, what is the root of the body shame? Where do we get these stories from? Where do we understand how we should and shouldn't relate to our bodies? And it really does come back down to looking at the systems that we live in, because it's actually an external system that perpetuates these stories. And then the community attach meaning to that and value to that. And then we tell each other the stories, and then we tell our kids the stories, and then it just keeps going on and on. And then as a person in the community, we end up internalizing those stories that were given to us from somebody else, and then we tell ourselves these stories. So it just goes round and round and round and round.
Yeah.
So we do need to call it out and say, well, what are the systems that are impacting us? And, you know, we have the patriarchal system, we have white supremacy, as well as a whole lot of other systems of oppression that exist. And what a system of oppression is that it gives someone power while taking the power away from somebody else. And it uses specific tools to disempower groups of people.
Yeah.
So the patriarchy actually does that. So the patriarchy is a system where, you know, women are subjugated to oppression through men through can be very subtle ways, but can also be very overt ways as well. And the people in power tend to be, it's a construct, it's a paradigm. It's not an actual physical thing, but it's a way of thinking about something. So it's a very kind of, I guess, subconscious system as well that exists. But what it means is that the people who are in power tend to be white, cisgendered. Now, what the word cisgendered means is that your identity and your gender corresponds with your birth sex. So you were born with male reproductive system and you identify as a male. So cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied males. They are the ones that are elevated to power, and that the systems are in place to keep them in power, which means, and this is all unearned privilege. So there's nothing that this group of people has done to be in power. They have been afforded unearned privilege through their birth, right? Mm-hmm. So it means everyone else who doesn't fit into that very narrow category of people with privilege have a varying scale of not having privilege, of not having power, of not having a sense of belonging and agency. So when we look at that, we can think about how people who are born into different bodies experience oppression. So it's not just women, but it's Black bodies, it's people of colour bodies, it's LGBTQIA bodies, it's bodies who have different abilities or neurodiverse bodies, it's aging bodies. So there's a whole lot of people in the world that fall into those categories. Now we're talking about women specifically. So we're born into this system and we hear these stories about how we should be and how we shouldn't be. The ideal body, and what I like to call the idealized body, is the male body. The male body that is switched on, does the same thing every single day, day in, day out, has the same amount of energy, does not cycle through and change as women's bodies do because of our menstrual cycle, and that we obviously can't live up to that standard of being a white, cisgendered, heterosexual, able-bodied male if we're not that. But then there's a standard that we're trying to attain. We're trying to attain the next best thing, which is a female version of that version. And so we are told that we need to be small. You know, the smaller you are, the more attractive you are. Okay, so we're not allowed to actually take up physical space. We're meant to be in small, thin bodies. We're meant to have certain proportions and body shapes that are attractive to the male ideal. Okay, that we're supposed to be white. You know, there is a real white supremacy exists because we're told that being white is the ideal, which it's not, obviously, but that's the system that we're living in. So we're told from a very early age that this is how we should be, and we fall short of it because most of us will fall short of what is an ideal and idolized version of the female. Yeah, so it's a very narrow, very prescriptive version of ourselves. And I love to think of it like it really is that, that classic vintage Barbie doll. She's got the blonde hair, the blue eyes. And there was this, there's some studies done a long time ago where they looked at if they took Barbie doll and they took her measurements and put her into a real body, that she wouldn't actually be able to exist, right? Because she wouldn't have room for her organs, because her hips were the wrong shape and her waist was too narrow and her boobs were too big. She actually would fall over because she was completely unbalanced.
And wasn't she meant to be like 8 foot tall or something like that?
Yeah, some kind of Amazonian woman who is really just a fantasy. Like, she's the fantasy of what we're supposed to be. And she really symbolizes that women's bodies are there for the pleasure and consumption of others.
Yeah.
That's what our body is about. And we are not that, right? We are whole beings that
we're so much more than that.
We're so much more than our body. We have so much more to give than our body. And our body, as Tara Brumfitt says, who was the filmmaker for the documentary Embrace, our body is not an ornament, it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to our life's experiences.
Yeah.
And yet we're told that our worthiness and our belonging is tied to our body.
Yeah.
It's tied to the appearance of our body. It's tied to the function of our body, so our reproductive function. So that therein lies the idea that just because you're a woman, you should want to have babies.
Yeah.
And you should, be able to do that without any problems. And the abilities of our bodies, that our body must be a certain way to be acceptable and worthy. So when we don't fall, there's not many people in the world who can live up to the Barbie doll standard, right? So we fall short. And we experience a lot of shame around that. We internalize that shame. We hear that this is how we should be, and we fall short. And then we fall into a pattern of thinking that our body is not enough. Our body is not worthy. And therefore we are not worthy as women to be the fullest, most beautiful expression of ourselves that we can be, because we are not living in the ideal body. So that's where body shame comes into it. And the way that the system works is that the patriarchy profits off you feeling shamed about your body. You go out and buy products, you buy beauty products, you buy things to try and make yourself slimmer. I mean, diet culture is in there. Diet culture is a massive part of body shame, that we should always be on a diet and trying to change our body. And it perpetuates that because it profits off it. So in one way, the patriarchy makes a lot of money off our shame. And so we're dishing out our hard-earned money to try and change our body. And then we're also preoccupied with our body. We're using our energy, our time. We're focusing on our body, on what's wrong with it and how we need to fix it and how we need to change it, that we become so preoccupied with our body that we actually miss out on living our life. That is a tragedy, in my opinion, that women are consumed with their body shame and not out there living their life. And it's really shapes a woman's experience, and it shapes the way she shows up in her life for herself, but also for her family. I mean, how many stories do we see, or maybe your listeners might have experienced it, where it's like they feel body shame around their body, so they don't want to put their bathers on and go for a swim in the pool with their kids or go to the beach. They cover up, they stay out of the fun. They don't create those fun memories with their families. They don't want photos taken of themselves. And I mean, that's putting women on the sidelines, isn't it, of their own life, the sidelines of their own life.
Yeah, it's really sad. And it stops us from showing up and doing our life's work, because we're so in that low level energy of there's something wrong with my body. I need to fix it before I'm worthy to participate in life. And I have seen it with so many women I know, and it just breaks my heart to think how much we're all missing out on by being stuck in that. And I want to thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's so powerful, even there, what you've shared. And I just want to say, what I say in my programs and things is that if we want society to value motherhood, we have to remember that we are society. And it's the same. Like, you might say, oh, but I'm not a white supremacist, or I'm I'm not part of the patriarchy, or that doesn't apply to me, I'm not telling those stories. But the fact is that it's subconscious, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So it's not that you're actively telling that story and trying to suppress people. And, you know, it's the fact that you live in this society means that you have received that messaging to the point that it's subconscious. And that's what they say now. I've seen a lot of people starting to talk about the fact that the next, you know, they say like people skills, the next big skill that we all need to learn is how to recognize and unlearn the things that we've been subconsciously programmed. And that's taking a look at our inner beliefs and seeing how does that line up with my true beliefs, and how does that line up with the patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy and systems of oppression, and unpacking ourselves from that. So amazing. So thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to add that little piece there to say that we've got to recognize that we are participating in these systems, whether we like it or not.
No, that was a brilliant way of bringing that to our attention, Rachelle, because we are doing every choice that we make, conscious or subconscious, shapes our experience, right? So even if we get out of the shower and we look in the mirror and we judge our body, we go, oh God, look at my thighs, or oh, I really should make sure I go and do more exercise to tone up my chicken arms, or, you know, every time that we judge our body, we are creating that story for ourselves. We are also judging every other single body on the planet, because if my body is not worthy enough, that means your body is not worthy enough either. And we actually buying into that system of oppression. We are a part of that. So if we want to change the world externally, we need to do the inner work. We need to actually dismantle our own inner voices that keep us oppressed. And then by doing that, we role model that for our family. We role model that for our children, which is so important. We don't want the children of the world to inherit this world, this broken world as it is, because we can change, we can grow, we can expand. We don't have to consent to this anymore, but we need to do the work. Yeah, you need to do the work yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we don't want them to experience the exact same experience. And like you said, this oppression, someone's profiting from us not participating. They're profiting financially from us not participating, and by continuing to feed the beast. They're also profiting by us not participating and not stepping up and enjoying our life and doing what we're here to do, because that means that we can't change things.
Exactly. So they continue. We can't. Yeah, we're not using our personal power to change the way that we show up in our world, and then we're perpetuating the same systems that oppressed our mothers, our grandmothers, and so forth.
So, okay, let's talk about then, what do we do? How do we build a positive relationship with our body? And a little bit, you started to talk about menstruating. How do we start to, what role does understanding our hormonal cycle play in having a more positive relationship with our bodies?
Excellent. Thanks for asking that question, because it's obviously my passion. But, you know, I think there's kind of a few steps involved. We need to understand body shame and how our relationship with our body is how we show up in our relationship with our body, and how that then interfaces with our experience of our body, as well as learning body literacy. So learning to understand our body, learning to cue into our signals, learning more on a biological level, what happens to our body, why does it happen, what are the functions of the hormones, and therefore we understand that this is part of our experience. We can try to resist and push against it, but it's actually better to understand it and know it and befriend it, rather than just trying to push through.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. So interestingly, like, women have somewhere between 400 and perhaps 450 periods in their lifetime.
Wow.
Right? That's a lot. Like, when you think of it over your whole menstrual career, shall we say,
yeah,
you know, from the time you start puberty through to menopause, that's 400 times you're doing this, right? So we have a beautiful opportunity to learn to befriend our period and to learn to feel empowered by it and learn the gifts of it, rather than constantly pushing against it. Because when we push against it, what happens is that we're playing into the patriarchal society, because that's what they want us to do. But we're also we're limiting the opportunity to find the gifts, and we're limiting our experience of understanding that there's ebb and flow to life. You know, life isn't just one way, or it's not a freeway, right? We don't just get on the freeway of life and just drive straight at 100 kilometers an hour and that's it. You know, there's ebb and flow. It's more like driving on a country road, driving on a freeway sometimes, isn't it? There's stretches of straight, and then there's bends, and there's the ebb and the flow. And when we can embrace that, then we can have a much kinder relationship with our body. So we want to kind of unpack period shame, because period shame is an extension of body shame. It's probably an even deeper level of body shame, really, because it's actually rejecting ourselves. When we reject our period, we are innately rejecting ourselves. So it is important to do the work. So to figure out, well, why am I feeling like this? Where did these stories come from? And I have a few little tricks to do that, Rachelle. I think bringing a sense of wonder and empathy to yourself and your stories is how to start. Okay, because once we start realizing, oh my God, listen to all the stories I'm telling myself, I'm judging myself, or we can go into a shame spiral pretty quickly, and then we can feel shame about our shame, and that gets us nowhere. So instead of bringing shame to more shame, approaching it with a sense of beautiful curiosity and wonder. Like, I wonder why I feel that my thighs are too big, or I wonder why my boobs aren't apparently the right shape, or whatever it might be. Like, I wonder where that idea came from. So bring a sense of curiosity and compassion to those stories. And then for those of you who have a 3 or 4 year old in your life, you are probably going through the stage of why, right? I think.
Yes.
Are you at that stage? Yes.
Lewis is nearly
being
3,
asked
so
why. Yeah. So it's like, but why, mummy? But why? But why? But why? And it gets pretty tedious, to be honest, when you've got a 3 and 4 year old. But what that shows is that children want to understand. They really want to get to the bottom of something. They're not just content to go, well, the sky is blue. Why is the sky blue? I don't know, that's just the color of it. But why, mum? But why, dad? But they want to get to the bottom of it. So we can play the but why game with ourselves and be that neutral stance. So maybe we could play a little game, Rachelle, if you want to. Maybe you can be the 3-year-old that says, but why?
Okay.
And I can be my internal dialogue that's feeling discontent with a body part. And this is kind of modeling what it might be like to kind of challenge those stories.
Yeah,
so I'm going to say a statement, and then I want you to be the 3-year-old that says, but why? But why? Can we do that?
Yeah, okay, that'll be fun. Let's do it.
Okay, all right. So let's say I've just got out of the shower, I'm toweling off, and I've just noticed the shape of my thighs. And I'm like, oh, God, my thighs are getting so big, and they're not, they're just wobbly, and there's cellulite, and they shouldn't look like this. What is going on? So that's the negative story that I'm telling myself. Okay, so this is where the 3-year-old steps in.
But why do I think that?
But why? But why do I think that? Well, because my thighs shouldn't be like this. They should be smaller, and I should have not as many dimples and pimples and, cellulite. This is horrible. Why do I look like this?
But why?
But why? What do you mean? I really want my thighs to be kind of sexy and toned, and I don't want this kind of skin on there. I want smooth skin instead, and I want smaller thighs.
But why?
Why would I want smaller thighs? Well, because smaller thighs are sexy, right? Like, isn't that what men want? They want smaller thighs, and they don't want to see this type of skin with cellulite on it.
But why?
Well, isn't that what everyone wants? Isn't that what we're told we should be doing? Isn't that what we see in the movies? I mean, you don't see movies with people with cellulite on their skin and, big thighs. Everyone's got smooth skin and smooth thighs and toned legs. Why do I have to have this?
Yeah, but why?
And so you can see you start to get to the bottom of it, So you sense go, that this is the message. It's the message that we're sold from media, from advertising, from consumerism. It's if you start to peel back the layers, you'll find the root cause will be the patriarchy every single time, right? It'll be that you are not enough. So I think that's just a nice little way that we can think about challenging our thoughts.
Really powerful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad it was powerful, because I think, if you've got mums, if you've got young, your audience has lots of young mums. So they're in that, why do I have to explain everything? But it's just chipping away and getting down deeper so that you really can embody and understand where this is coming from. Because when you can understand where it's coming from, you actually understand that your body shame is not you. It is not you. You are a beautiful being of the universe, and your shame is not you. It's the story that you've internalized. It's the story that you've told yourself. It's an external thing outside of you that you have been acculturated to, that you did not consent to. This is the world that we live in, as we talked about. So it's okay to separate yourself out from that. And it's more than okay. It's what we want to promote, right? Is that I separate myself from my stories. And when I do that, I can create new stories. I can create the life that I want through creating the new stories and new experiences. Yeah. So there's some tips on how to work through body shame.
Lovely. That's really so cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And the hormonal cycle, should we?
Yeah, okay. Yes, sorry. That's right.
Yeah.
It was a really long, big, deep question, so I'm loving it. Keep going.
Yeah. So when we realise that we have this body shame and we have this period shame, you can apply those same kind of principles that I spoke about body shame with your period. So why do I feel that periods are annoying, and why do I feel like it's a taboo? Why do I have to hide my tampon in my, chucked in my bra, or scuttle to the toilet and nobody see me while I'm changing my menstrual products or whatever, that we're carrying around all of this shame around our body. And so what we kind of unpack that period shame in the same way that we would unpack body shame. And then we also want to do a different approach, which is learning body literacy. So learning how to understand, why does my body do this? Now, I will just kind of let your audience know that this information is, it's general in nature, and it's not intended to be taken as medical advice. So if you have any concerns about your period or your body at any stage, it's important to go and see your doctor about that, because you do know your body best. Even if you haven't cultivated a deep understanding with your body, you still know your body best. So if something doesn't feel right, go to the doctor.
Good place to start. Yeah.
It is, yeah. Go and get yourself checked out, and then you can, look at other modalities if there's something else in there that you want to try, lifestyle changes, all that kind of thing. But it's really important to get a baseline, get the medical test done, and do that thing as well as part of that process. So with our menstrual cycle, a lot of women don't actually understand their menstrual cycle. They don't understand the hormones that happen. They don't understand why we have hormones. And, just as a kind of an aside, but it's interesting that the Greek word for womb is hystera, right?
Yes.
Now you can probably see where this is going.
Yeah.
ancient Egyptians, when women were hysterical, that was air quotes for those, obviously you can't see me, but when women were acting outside of what was socially acceptable, if they had big emotions, if they had unruly behavior, it was attributed to the womb. So they were hysterical because of their womb. Now, it's not just their womb, but they believed, the ancient Egyptians, that it was a wandering womb that moved around your body, wreaking havoc.
The Egyptians, love them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were at the forefront from some things, but building pyramids, but understanding the human body maybe not so much. But what's happened as a result of that is that the patriarchy attaches meaning to that, and we attach meaning to that if we are indeed experiencing fluctuations in our emotions, we are now hysterical, which means we are unreasonable, irrational. We're just the angry women, and that keeps us in our box. Yeah. So I think it's just important to talk about that, because it means that even our hormones are covered in shame. We have been shamed for having hormones, and when I explain the cycle.
Oh, yeah, because I was going to say, well, that seems to link back with what you were saying about the ideal body being a male body, which is doesn't have, well, it has hormones, but not the same hormones as women. So we compare our female body in the way it's responding, and it's not how a male body would respond, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Because the male body has sustained levels of testosterone and a small amount of estrogen, whereas we have estrogen, progesterone, and a small amount of testosterone. So we just we're totally different beings, right? We just cannot operate in the same way. And of course, we've been shamed for having a female body, and therefore our hormones have been demonized, which is it's so sad, because our hormones are actually here to support us and serve us and give us good health. And if we can reframe that, then we can understand and embrace them rather than push them away. So in terms of talking about the menstrual cycle, so I will talk about a 28-day cycle. And when you start digging around in the menstrual field, you'll find that everyone talks about the 28-day cycle being the standard, air quotes. Again, medical science likes to put things in little boxes, but people have a variation of their cycle, and anywhere from 21 to 35 days is actually okay if there's not any other symptoms, right? So there's a huge variation. But we'll talk about a 28-day cycle, because that tends to be, when you start looking around, that's what you'll read about. So a 28-day cycle, day 1 is the first day of your bleeding, okay? So the first day that you bleed, you would track that as day 1. And there are 2 halves to the cycle. There's the first half of the cycle is about preparing the body for ovulation. The second half of the cycle is maintaining the endometrium lining until pregnancy has not been achieved, and then it'll kickstart the menstruation process. Now, within our cycles, we actually have 4 seasons, or 4 cycles within our cycle. So day 1 to day 6 is actually when we're bleeding. It's our moon time or our menstruation, and we're shedding the endometrium lining. So some of the literature also talks about this being our winter phase, right? So this beautiful season that our body goes through, this kind of dormant season where we should be kind of relaxing, slowing down, taking stock, just as nature does. So we've got these beautiful, seasons within nature, but we actually replicate these seasons within ourselves as well, if you want to see it that way. So winter is our bleeding. And the first day that we bleed, our brain is actually sending hormones from our brain to stimulate production of estrogen in our ovaries to start the cycle again. Yep. So we kind of have this space where we're letting go, but we're also creating anew at the same time. It's an amazing process. So what happens between day 1 and day 14 is that our ovaries will start to produce rising levels of estrogen, and the purpose of this is to build up the endometrium lining of the uterus and of the uterine wall. And that endometrium is where, if there is a fertilized egg, it will implant itself on the endometrium wall. So it builds up the endometrium wall. It also releases 1 egg from 1 ovary per cycle, is matured, and at day 14 it will rupture and it will cause ovulation to happen in a 28-day cycle. So the thing about estrogen and about this time, so this is now day 6 to day 13, day 14. This is our springtime. So this is when our body is, really energetic. We're focused on creating new things, just like spring is in the normal season, in the natural seasons of our world. And estrogen is one of those beautiful hormones that actually interacts with lots of different systems in our body. But what it does is it also increases serotonin production in our brain. So it's a feel-good chemical. So we feel good. Then we have a small surge of testosterone, which helps us be focused and productive, because that's the masculine. So we feel really good. We're out there. We're creating new things. We're energized and we feel fantastic. Then ovulation occurs and we move into the summer phase of our cycle. So the next kind of day 14 to day 21 is now the summer phase of our cycle. So estrogen drops off at this point, and the follicle for which the egg ruptured from begins to produce progesterone. So progesterone is a natural hormone that we create, and it's called progesterone because it's progestation. So it actually has to maintain the lining. So estrogen's done its job of building up the lining. Now it's progesterone's job to keep the lining maintained, keep it nice and plush, so that if an egg is fertilized, it can implant itself upon the wall. Now, progesterone is the hormone that has an effect, a calming and loving effect on our body, right? So it kind of chills us out and it makes us kind of receptive to intimacy, which is perfect timing because this is our body's wisdom, right? Like, feel good when you're ovulating so you have sex and make more babies.
Yeah.
So progesterone comes in and makes us feel really good, makes us feel good in our body, makes us calmer and more patient with our families. And so progesterone feels awesome. We love progesterone. And then we have about a week where we could get an egg could be successfully fertilized and implanted. If the egg doesn't get implanted, it will only survive about 24 hours and then it'll dissolve. But our body will keep the maintenance of the lining going for about a week. And this is because sperm can live in the uterus and in the fallopian tubes for like 4 or 5 days. So if you're trying to fall pregnant, you generally try to track your cycle. You know, you try to have the sperm ready to go in your uterus so that when you ovulate, the two will come together.
Yeah,
that's the idea, because it's kind of potluck if you just leave it to chance. It's good to try to kind of figure out what's going on there. So if you know that's the point, then that helps you with falling pregnant if that's your goal. So we have another rise in estrogen at this point in time as well. So we have our lovely estrogen and progesterone is working together to make us feel really good. And then we hit our autumn phase, which is 21 to 28 days. And what's happened now is we're not successfully pregnant. And so we don't need to keep producing all of these hormones because their job was to build up the lining and now we need to let it go. So we actually have a really steep decline in those levels of hormones. The progesterone, the estrogen, it all starts to drop off. So our feel-good hormones disappear from our body. And that's when we get premenstrual. That's our premenstrual phase.
This is where I always end up rearranging the lounge room.
That's your thing. Isn't it great that you know what happens and now I've all of a sudden got to change everything. Yeah. So, the premenstrual week gets a lot of rap. It gets a bad rap, right, in our world, because we're irrational all of a sudden. Yeah. But what it is it's the lack of hormones that make us feel good. That it's the decrease in those hormones that actually kind of lifts the veneer a little bit. And the things that we maybe didn't want to put up with, or the things that aren't working for us, actually come to the surface a bit, don't they? Like, we actually start to get irritated and we start to, want to tell that person no stuff off. The thing that
that's what I mean. I'm going to rearrange the lounge room because why isn't it clean again? Angry.
Yeah. Yeah. So the things that are underlying that are getting our goat are going to come up to the surface then. I tend to get on a social justice bandwagon in that week. That's when I'm like, right, let's destroy the patriarchy. All of those things come to the fore for me. I'm like, I need to go out and raise money for a cause or write a letter to a politician. Yeah. I find that I've been able to channel that. Now that I know that's what happens, I channel my energy, right? Whereas before, I would have just yelled at everybody. I just would have or burst into tears or both. But now I know how to channel my energy. I don't do that as much. I can't say I'm perfect, but I definitely don't do it as much. So ironically, when we say, oh gosh, I'm hormonal, we blame our hormones, but it's the absence of our hormones that are making us feel this way, not our hormones. So even if your listeners could maybe just shift their perspective in one small way, it's not your hormones' fault. Your hormones are always trying to help you. They're not trying to make life hard for you.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful. And like you said, it's learning to understand it and expect it so that you can plan for it, I guess. So instead of picking a fight because you're feeling ragey, I need to take a break or start to, separate from things or, whatever you need to support yourself, right?
Exactly. So knowing where you are in your cycle gives you that power to decide, well, what do I choose for myself this week?
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a family conflict, it's not, your autumn season is not the time to plan to have that conversation because it's probably going to go pear-shaped, right?
Yeah.
But if you do it in your summer phase, you're going to be more generous of spirit and you're going to be more calmer. So you can pick and choose your battles according to where you are in your cycle. Mm-hmm. And you can also harness that. So if you have the opportunity to plan things, plan them in your do week, plan them in your give week, or your summer and your spring week, rather than at the end of your cycle when you're feeling quite flat or tired or during your actual menstrual cycle when it's winter, and we could take that opportunity to go inwards and rest and restore rather than being out there in the world doing and being.
Even like it can be big things or it can be small things. Like I know that like my autumn week is a good week for like rearranging the lounge room, or like decluttering or cleaning, doing deep cleaning stuff, or just getting a whole lot of to-do lists done so that I can feel like I'm prepared and I'm actually using that energy so that I can start to rest when it's time to slow down a little bit next week.
That's beautiful. So making that space so where you don't hit your winter and then go, oh my God, I've got all these things to do and I feel really tired and I feel like I just want to retreat.
So you actually have a series of steps in understanding. So you've explained what our cycle is and how to understand it in a deeper way, but you've got another little framework that helps us. Do you want to quickly run through those with us before we say goodbye?
Sure, would love to. Thank you. So there's kind of the 6 R's which I use. So there's rhythm, relationship, ritual, rest, reflect, and renew. So I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. But rhythm is understanding our rhythm. So we've talked a lot about understanding the seasons within our cycle and understanding hormonally what is happening in a biological sense. So understanding that the best way to do that is to start tracking your cycle. I cannot, say that enough. Track your cycle and then you will know what is happening. It'll be so empowering if you don't already track your cycle to do it. And to a lot of these apps, I mean, you can do it in your diary or your calendar on paper if you want to, but there is a plethora of apps available where you can do it on your app, and you can chart your mood, your stress levels, your libido, any other symptoms, physical symptoms you might be feeling, like, oh, my breasts are tender now, or I'm experiencing acne, or I have backache, or any of those things. You can actually track it, and then you get to step back and see, this is what happens in my world and in my body each month. So definitely tracking your cycle, learn about menstruation, what it happens, why it happens, all of that body literacy stuff. So that's understanding your rhythm. The relationship, which we talked about extensively, is how do I cultivate a loving and kind relationship with my body, all on different points in our journey. And so don't ever please compare your beginning to someone else's middle. If this is a new thing for you, it's okay. Wherever you're at is okay. And so I like to see it as a spectrum of body love and acceptance. And at one end we have body shame, and at the other end we have body love. And sometimes we fall in the middle, which is just acceptance, like just accepting it is what it is. You don't have to love your body. It's a huge thing to undertake, or it can be. And likewise, if you're someone who this is actually causing a lot of dysfunction in your life, to have this experience with body shame, please go and get professional help with that. There are counselling services, there are mental health services available for that, because there are people who are trained to deal with that, and they're the best person to go through and support you in that journey. But if it's just something that you want to work on, building a relationship is bringing that awareness to it, challenging it, and then creating new stories. You can do this by yourself, but I recommend, to get the best out of it, is to find some support in your community. So whether that's women's circles, whether that's an online community where you can talk about your feelings and share your experiences. We are not meant to do life alone, right? We are meant to do it with each other, and we hold up a mirror to each other, and we can share and we can support each other. So I really recommend that if you're going to embark upon this, find the right support for you. And then we have rituals. So creating rituals around the different seasons. You obviously have a ritual of rearranging your furniture every month, which I love. I wonder how many different configurations there can be.
Endless.
Of your lounge room. Yeah. I tend to do a lot of rituals around my moon time, around my winter, my bleeding. That's when I really sink into my rituals. So I have a special drawer in my bedroom, and it has all of my special moon time stuff. So I have a hot pack in there with beautiful fabric that I really love. I have a journal in there that I only use when I'm menstruating. Mm-hmm. I have candles that I use, that I get out, and my family know now. They see the candle and they're like, "Oh, Mum's menstruating," because it's the that's the symbol. It's me lighting a light to myself. It's me lighting the candle to myself and honoring myself that this is what I'm going through. This is my time to rest. I have essential oil blends in there. And so I have all of these beautiful things that I use just for my menstruation. So it's really special and it's just my own. Nobody else gets to use it. So it makes it really special. And yoga, meditation, there's a lot of things we can do around rituals. And then the next one is really, you know, rest. And it's pretty simple. It's rest. Just deep, restorative rest. If it means you have to ask for help, if it means you have to outsource things, if it means you have to prioritize rest over other things, do it, because that is what your body is wanting. You are actually bleeding and losing blood. And although it's a normal process, our body is signaling to us to take it slowly. So I think
listen to that one message of your body, you can start to tune into the other messages.
Exactly. And that's where the beautiful gifts lie with our menstruation, because then we can listen to our intuition, right? Because we can start to create space in our life. If we're so busy, we have no time to listen to what our soul is really asking of us. So we need to carve out time and we need to prioritize it, that it's important, because we're important. Mums are important. We got to look after ourselves, right? And then create space for ourselves. So when we embrace the rest, the resting period, we actually have more vitality for the next part of our cycle. And that doesn't mean go out and do more necessarily, but it just means that you'll bring a level of lightness and a level of vibrancy to your life and to your family. So it's a way of giving back to yourselves to give to others as well. So we can reflect during our period, and this is what I was talking about before, was that we have this period of time where we're letting go of the old and we're bringing in the new. So that's what winter is all about. It's letting go and being able to tune into what you want to invite into the next month. So if you've had a particularly hard month, if it might be a time to, get out your journal and write down, well, what went right for me, what went wrong for me, and what do I want to invite into the world, or what do I want to work on? How can I shift into that next energy? What kind of energy do I want to bring into the next month for me? We can't do that if we're too busy.
Yeah, that's right. And this could just be easily like choosing to go to bed after the kids go to bed and hopping in bed and doing your journaling in there rather than sitting and chilling out in front of Netflix. It doesn't have to be complicated or difficult. This is really practical, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's not about changing your whole lifestyle or expecting yourself to do this every single period. And, it's not like another to-do thing, right? It shouldn't be another source of shame and guilt, right? It's really a beautiful gift to yourself. And so by saying, actually, I am going to just have an early night and, go up to my room, maybe put on some beautiful hand cream and sit there and smell the hand cream and just kind of get back in your body rather than too much up in your head, and just, creating that beautiful space to just write in your journal. And, in the programs and workshops that I'm running, there are some questions that you can use to guide that as well. So you don't even then have to think about the questions as well. So perhaps we can, put that in the show notes as well, about what kind of questions do you want to reflect on, rather than when you're at low capacity because your hormones are the lowest, to then try to do more is putting unnecessary strain on yourself.
Yeah.
And once we've done all of this beautiful rest and reflection, we are renewed, right? So we can step into our springtime with a sense of renewal. And this is a beautiful opportunity we have every cycle to create new stories, to create new ways of being, to create new experiences in the month going forward. So you can set yourself a simple intention, and then this month I'm going to bring this into my experience. So that's my formula around that.
I love it. It's so beautiful. Thank you for everything that you've shared today. It has been an incredible conversation. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anything to leave us with, final words of wisdom before we say goodbye?
Sure. I think it's just really important to know that, the crux of all of this is that we get to decide, right? Like, we get to create our life. Yes, we live in systems of oppression. Yes, there are layers and layers of stories that we need to work through. But ultimately, it comes back to us. Ultimately, it comes back to, what kind of life do I want to create? What kind of relationship do I want to create with my body? And knowing that the power lies within you to do that. And even though it might feel overwhelming, every small step you make is progress and creates another ripple of change within you to want to do more, to go deeper, to want to love yourself more, to want to be kinder to yourself. And when you do that, you not only create change for yourself, but you create a beautiful ripple of change within your family, and that your children, you're role modeling that to your children, because we don't want to live with body shame, and we don't want to pass that down to our kids, right? We don't want the next generation to experience that. So all the internal work you do for yourself is going to have this beautiful positive ripple effect on the world. But we need to slow down, and we need to honor it, and we need to respect it in order to get the gifts that are available through our menstrual cycle. So I guess it's just trying to encourage people to, you know, maybe set an intention with your next cycle. Like, how do I want to learn to embrace my period? Or how can I be kinder to myself? Or ask yourself, if I didn't have body shame in my life, how would I show up differently? What would, if I could remove that barrier out of my life entirely, what could I invite in? And how would that benefit me and my family?
So beautiful. Thank you so much, Kylie. I really appreciate, wow. So we'll leave our little links to everything that we've talked about in the show notes, and of course where we can find you on the internet. Do you want to share with us quickly, though, in case somebody doesn't have a chance to check the show notes, what's your Instagram or website?
Sure. So my Instagram handle is at Liminal Women. So I'll spell that LIMINALWOMEN. So Liminal Women. And my website is www.liminalwomen.com. That's where they can find me.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
That's it for another episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you'd like to connect further, the show notes from today's episode, including all the social links and free resources, are over on my website, howtoliveslow.com/podcast. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll speak with you again soon.